Is Chelsea's season starting to go to shambles? They got knocked out of the UEFA Champions League after losing to PSG in quite emphatic form. Everton, on the other hand, the season starting to look like they're pretty much safe. Could they push for those European places? That's the big question that everyone's going to be asking David Moyes at the end of the season. Dan, quickly, how do you rate Chelsea's performance over two legs against PSG? There's a school of thought that they were unlucky in a way and they were set up to lose anyway in the second leg. Or did you think if there's someone to
Uh,
blame, is it the players or is it the manager?
I think the manager's got to take some culpability for that due to the margin of defeat, both home and away. You could argue that they were slightly unlucky in the first leg, especially at 2-2. They looked like they were in the game, but that collapse was very painful when PSG went out 5-2 winners and they never really got going in the second leg. So I think Liam Rossini is going to feel a bit of pressure for that. He's obviously writing notes in his notepad, so it'd be interesting to see what notes he made when they were 8-2 down in aggregate. But yes, I think the better second half performance, sorry, second leg performance, I should say. But by that point, the deal was already done. So I feel that Chelsea are going through the motions really, but they can't afford to. Now they're at the Champions League. They are sixth in the Premier League. That's not good enough to be back at the European top table next season. So a lot riding into not just this weekend, but the next few weeks.
All right. In terms of how they've set up this year, obviously we've seen the way that the owners have decided to go by young players with a lot of potential, get a lot of them in. You think maybe it's a bad decision when you have so many young players, inexperienced players when it comes to winning trophies and playing at the highest level, when you pair them with a manager who's also young and inexperienced?
Yes, it feels like there's always a lot of promise with Chelsea, but that promise isn't really delivered. Now, obviously, they won the Club World Cup and the Europa Conference League last season, but they're not the major prizes that you would be expecting Chelsea to win. Certainly, over Chelsea of 5 years ago when they won the Champions League, there's definitely been some form of drop off, and you just feel there needs to be a spine of experience. Their key players, obviously, Reece James suffering another injury, that's not going to help, but there's so many talents that could hit the next level in the next year or two, but they're not there yet. They need someone just to sort of guide them through. A couple of senior pros that have really been there and done that. That's what they are lacking. You remember when they had players of like Thiago Silva, for example, that real esteemed, assured head at the back. They're missing that kind of um, deployment that they could call upon in terms of maturity. So, yeah, it's just kind of looking like there's a piece of a jigsaw coming together, but not all the pieces there at the moment. And when you consider the way that Chelsea trade players, there's probably going to be even more overhaul in the summer, and you almost feel like they're back to square one.
If everyone can tell that they need a bit of mature heads, and I think that's probably part of the reason why they fell out with the former manager Enzo Maresca, because obviously I think he wanted to get some experienced players in. If everyone can see that this is a problem, I remember they tried to sign Mike Mignon in the AC Milan goalkeeper in the summer. For some reason, that deal looked like a very easy deal to do, but Chelsea somehow walked away from it. Why are the owners not making these adjustments that look really minute to us? Why aren't they making those decisions?
Because you and I look at it through a football lens, and that makes a lot of sense. They are looking at it from a financial sense. It's all about resale value. If you buy a player of that age, how much can you get for him thereafter? Not a lot. So they're looking at flipping players. These are players that if they do come good for Chelsea, fantastic. But also, there's probably an element of right, we can buy for 30, sell for 50, and keep the wheel spinning that way. So Chelsea have become less of a football club and far more of a business. And what we're seeing in the past few weeks is kind of the detriment of all their footballing talents. That it's all about the value on the spreadsheet.
All right, let's look at the game properly. And Everton, they have had some really good time against some of the biggest teams in England lately. They did beat Manchester United, ran Arsenal really close at the Emirates, and Arsenal going for the Premier League title. How do you think they fare and stack up against this Chelsea team? Obviously, Everton have had 1 week of rest. Chelsea, not that fresh, obviously coming off that disappointing performance against PSG. What threat do this Everton side pose?
I think with Everton, it's always a case of how stable they can be. If they can get the house in order, then they've got a greater chance of getting something out of the game. Goals scored, they've only got, where are we, 34 out of 30 this season, so only just a goal more on average per game. Not really enough to sort of win games, but they are dependable. So I think they've got to keep Chelsea quiet. If they can get the first goal, then that really puts them in the driving seat. But it's a case of can they get that first goal? They have had many options in terms of attack. Beto, Tiano Barry, never quite clicked this season. A lot of supporting cast as well. can have sort of a purple patch of a good 2-3 games, and you think, right, this is an Everton team on the up and up, but they never quite kick on. So it's always one step forward, 2 steps back with the Toffees. But on their day, they can beat anyone. They were very good against Arsenal. That momentary blip which let Victor Gyökeres score in the dying seconds, and then Max Dowman's goal, probably not telling the full story of the game at the Emirates, but you just you never know what Everton you're going to get. And Chelsea will hope that this is the Everton that doesn't have the firepower and they can bounce back to victory. But obviously, Everton fans will be thinking, well, this is a Chelsea team which is really down on their luck and we can take advantage.
Obviously, Chelsea are staring down the barrel a bit. They're still in, like you said, contention to get into the Champions League, still in the FA Cup. At this point, what's your personal opinion around Liam Rosinha, and what happens to him? What would be the idea of a decent season for Chelsea now?
I think from this point, I think winning the FA Cup, getting some form of silverware, but again, that's from a football perspective and wanting to win something and have something to look back on. But if you were the Chelsea owners, you're thinking we need to be in the Champions League. They would probably swap a top 5 finish for the FA Cup, arguably with the money situation that they're in due to how much they've spent over the past few years. They probably need that Champions League to get the FA Cup itself. So I think either or is a good start. If you're asking the board, as I say, they probably want a return to Europe's top competition. And if that's not the case for Rosinha, they might then have to look again for a new manager. The way he was installed was kind of part convenience, part talent. Obviously, he did a decent job at Strasbourg, but were Strasbourg not connected to Chelsea, I don't think Liam Rosinha gets that job. So a marriage made in convenience, and now you're sort of feeling that, oh, Chelsea going through the motions and maybe having a look at what other options come available in the summer.
All right, so let's put our betting caps on for this one. How do you think this one goes?
Well, I think it's going to be under 2.5 goals for the simple reason that Chelsea have had 4 failures to score against Everton in the last 6 trips to Merseyside. But of course, that's at Goodison Park. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at Everton's new ground. But again, for the reasons I've stated in terms of a lack of Everton goals and a lack of Chelsea confidence, I think this one ends in under 2.5 goals. If I'm feeling really brave, I think Everton will get something. I don't know about a win, so maybe a draw and under 2.5 goals to squeeze a bit more value. But I don't think entertainment's going to be on show in the blue half of Merseyside.
All right, thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks, Tolu.